So the next thing is, everybody likes points, right? Yeah, I like points. So everyone here should like points. So, everything that we can do to move the ball down the field, put the points on the board, play complementary football with the defense, right? You play full team football. I think that is pivotal in the success, not only of an offense, but of a program as a whole. And so just doing that, continuously working together, and be explosive, right? Explosive plays win. And so that's what you can expect. That's what you're going to see. And we're going to get to rolling on that as soon as possible.
That was him. That's the offensive coordinator of the University of Oklahoma, 29-year-old Ben Arbuckle. We haven't met him yet, obviously.
Yeah, might be a few months.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm trying to plan something, the Arbuckle Fiesta, the symposium that we're going to have, the conference that we're going to have in the Arbuckle Mountains. Nice. I don't know. He's more than invited. Ben, you're going to be invited. I think we're going to be best friends. I don't know if he's going to come, though. So
yeah, I'll be there.
I'll pause myself on that. Eddie Radosevich here, George Stoya. Welcome back to the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. We're going to go ahead and recap everything that was said on Wednesday at Brent Venables' National Signing Day press conference. Hopefully you've taken in the instant reaction news from Wednesday that became a very busy afternoon with Jackson Arnold. We talked to Josh McCuistion about that, as well as Michael Fasusi sticking with the Oklahoma 2025 class. That was, I guess bad and really, really good news with Michael Fasusi. Nic Anderson's name has been put out there today on Thursday. Sounds like he's headed to the transfer portal. I know it's a lot of surprise for a lot of people out there. Maybe not so much, though, when you look at the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, look, in the transfer portal era, you shouldn't ever be surprised by anything. And you look at Nic Anderson this season, obviously with the quad injury, he tore it. I think he kind of tore it preseason, then he re-tore it during the season against Tennessee, ended up only playing, I think, 9 snaps the entire season. I think that it was one of those situations where Nick – he said that he wanted to go, with a fresh start. And you hear that term a lot, fresh start, when this happens. But I think for Nick, I think that he looked at the season, the injuries he had, and maybe, how it was handled behind the scenes. I don't know that for a fact, but I do think that there's some alluding to that. And I think that there's probably some truth to it. And then you look at all the change that Oklahoma's going through, quarterback, offensive coordinator. I think it just makes the most sense for Nick to go look elsewhere, and don't be surprised if some of these other wide receivers that have battled injuries this year look somewhere else.
Yeah, I would almost say I would expect it to happen like that.
I think the only one that
Deion Burks, though, it may be a little bit of a different situation, not so much the portal, but a declaration of trying to move it on to the next
level. It seems
level.
like that's a very real thing that he's considering, and I think he would end up getting drafted, so it would make sense for him. It sucks, but it feels like that's maybe the most likely scenario. You never know. Jalil Farouk's the only one that I think is coming back. I know people close to him are assuming that he's going to come back for another season. We'll see if that changes with, again, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, like everything that goes into that. Obviously, he's dealt with some injuries, so we'll see. But other than that, Jaden Gibson, I don't really know.
I don't think a lot of people know.
Andrew Anthony,
what's that status
idea.
with his knee? I mean, I think that's the reason that he wasn't able to get back out onto the field is because of all the setbacks there.
Right.
It's certainly going to be a position that Oklahoma is going to have to attack and attack aggressively once the transfer portal opens on Monday, December 9th, coming out of championship weekend, obviously. We had talked to Brent Venables, though, on Tuesday. Ben Arbuckle, it's official. I know that you've been watching the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel and everything that we've been putting out on the hire, but for the first time on Tuesday, we were able to kind of hear from, I keep saying Tuesday.
Well, it's because all year we had it on Tuesday.
And all the days are mixed up as well. On Wednesday, we did hear from Brent Venables for the first time talking about the hire, though.
Yeah, it was great to hear him kind of, he had the press release where he kind of goes into it and explains it, but him really getting into the details of the search of basically saying, hey, look, I looked around for 2 months, and I think that what really stood out to him about Ben Arbuckle, and hear from him here in a second, is just seeing the tape, seeing the different offenses that he's run, because I think a lot of people out there just assume he runs the air raid offense, is going to throw it all over the yard, and he does that, but he's shown in all 3 years that he's been a play caller to do some different things and kind of adjust to the personnel that he has. And I think that's what really attracted Brent Venables to him, is the ability to kind of change what they're doing offensively, and also just take whatever Oklahoma has next season and let it excel.
Here is Brent Venables talking about a little bit about the process and how he landed in hiring Ben Arbuckle.
Yeah, Ben, again, I spent a lot of time, almost 2 months, looking at the best candidates in college football, and got to watch it. And there's certainly, you look at a lot of things. You take recommendations. You talk with people they work with. I love watching the tape, because that to me is the ultimate resume, and you get a feel for things. I've studied offenses more than I've studied defenses over the past 3 decades, and I have an appreciation for style, presentations, sequences, answers, game plans, personnel, and utilizing the personnel, those types of things, and a lot of little things that a lot of people don't see, maybe checks that maybe some people have built into their systems. Things of that nature. And then, there's a lot of analytics that maybe support what you see, or maybe bring to light what you need to pay attention to. Overall efficiency, explosiveness, first downs, third downs, red zone, points per possession. There's a really cool report that the analytics, some of the best analytics people use. It's called the Snyder formula, and that's after our own Hall of Famer in Kansas State, Bill Snyder, one of the best offensive minds in the last several decades in college football. He has his own report, and everything that I continue to look at, and there's a lot of excellent, candidates that we narrowed it down to, and Ben continued to be at the top of the list.
I think one of those numbers that we've talked about time and time again when we were talking about just the search in general, explosive plays, and that's something that Ben Arbuckle, we'll talk about his age here in a minute. I know that's bothering a lot of people out there. That's something that he has been associated with. All these offenses,
Yep.
Western Kentucky, Washington State, obviously the last 2 years, they find ways to have explosive plays down the field.
Yeah, his first year calling plays at Western Kentucky, they were number 1 in the country in explosive plays through the air. I think they had 81 pass plays over 20 yards in 2022 at Western Kentucky, and I think he's been top 10 the last 2 years at Washington State in terms of passing plays over 20 yards. So he's shown that he can have explosive plays. Oklahoma, I think, is, I want to say, third to last in the country right now in explosive plays, which is not good. So I think
Thank you
that's
for that.
Yeah, I think that Ben brings that, and he's shown to be able to do it in different ways. And I know a lot of people, again, want to say, oh, well, he only throws the ball. I think this year they ran the ball actually 55% of the time. That's Washington State this season. So obviously he's actually run the ball more this year than he did in previous years, and he's shown to adjust. I think with Cam Ward, he didn't run Cam Ward a ton. He's not much of a runner, whereas John Mateer obviously has, I think, run for over 800 yards and 15 touchdowns this season. So again, he takes what's given to him in terms of personnel-wise and adjusts. You heard Brent Venables talk about it on Wednesday, too. They run a lot of different personnel, 11, 12, 13, 14 personnel. I formation they'll run at the goal line, which is a welcome sight, right? Oklahoma fans, they're going to go under center at times if they have the right personnel to do so. So I think all of those things, along with the way he's been able to develop some quarterbacks, and we talked about this with Josh McCuistion yesterday, he's been able to develop some quarterbacks that weren't really highly thought of coming out of high school. Imagine what he can do if he can get, a Jaden O'Neal on campus in a couple years, a guy that's super talented. So I think all of those things made him a very attractive candidate.
We'll have a little bit more on just development in general, but I know that when the hire's made, you look at the age, 29 years old, you look at the experience, not so much. He was coaching high school football back in 2020. He's had a meteoric rise through the coaching ranks, and now he lands at Oklahoma. Has that been a problem for you? I know that that's something that Brent Venables spoke on Wednesday, and I don't think that if you're looking for him to say that age is a factor, you're going to be a little disappointed.
Yeah, look, I think the history at Oklahoma shows that it doesn't matter, right, what the age is. Now, his resume isn't super long, maybe not even as long as some others, because, like you said, just 4 years ago, he was coaching high school football. 5 years ago, he was an unpaid assistant at Houston Baptist.
Sure.
And his job at Houston Baptist, I found this out writing a feature story on him, was basically like cutting up some film and stuff and then making graphic design posts for guys that like committed to the university. Like he wasn't even doing a lot of
maybe he's well versed in Adobe Photoshop.
Yeah, he must be. But and then he gets his first gig at Seminole High School, and then Zach Kitley brings him to Western Kentucky, and he just gets kind of thrown into the fire. So it's a really short resume, but it's been impressive. Everything he's done, you look at even his time as an analyst at Western Kentucky. Bailey Zappi, who's now playing in the NFL, broke pretty much every single passing record in all of college football. That gets Zach Kitley the job at Texas Tech. Ben Arbuckle gets promoted, and then Austin Reed turns around and has a massive year at Western Kentucky, and then obviously Cam Ward and John Mateer. So, I think all of those things played into it, but I don't think the age was a big hang-up for Brent.
Here is Brent Venables just talking about the lack of true experience, obviously at the Power 4 level. Doesn't seem like much of a concern for the Oklahoma head coach.
I look at the quality, not necessarily the quantity, and then I got to look at the other things. Personality, maturity, leadership skills, colleague testimonials, things of that nature. What have they done with what they've had? Again, I was offered an associate head coach and defensive coordinator at a really good program when I was 27 years old. 2 years of experience, never calling it, and there at Kansas State. So I'm just a living testimony that, not that, I was pretty good early, and I've been having a pretty good career, over the course of 3 decades. And so, or maybe you look across on the other side of the ball in Zach Alley. Doesn't have a long resume of calling defenses and in the SEC, like no resume in calling it in the SEC. But at the same time, I look at all those other things, what it is that we're doing in the schemes. There's lots of different schemes that are very successful. And but for me, I think what Oklahoma needed and has been really good at over a long period of time is the ability to attract great quarterbacks and certainly explosive athletes that you can push and challenge people, put pressure on defenses vertically through the air, but also be an offense that has great balance and punish people in the run game and attack people where they're most vulnerable. You've got to have balance. You've got to have efficiency. You've got to have game control. And you've got to be able to utilize the personnel that you have and keep people off balance. And so when you peeled it all back through several conversations with a lot of people and certainly interviews, if you will, looking at the tape as video evidence and the multiplicity and things of that nature, I continue to come back to Coach Arbuckle.
We've talked about it before, but I do think that there was just a certain level of comfort that came with some older guys. But if Arbuckle's going to be the guy, and if they hit on this, it could be a lot of fun because you do watch Washington State. They were a fun offense to watch at times. I know not the last 2 weeks. Don't watch the Wyoming game. Watch portions of the New Mexico game. Everything else was really, really good.
Yeah, and I think that the highest ceiling was Ben Arbuckle, right? Of the candidates that we've talked about, if he hits, it's going to be a big time hire. And look, he needs to hit a home run. Brent Venables does to save his job next season. That's the reality of the situation. Maybe he hit a grand slam, or maybe he goes down, striking out here. But I think you have to give Brent credit for that.
Either way, better go down swinging if you're going to go down. Do want to continue the conversation about Ben Arbuckle and some of the stuff that Brent Venables had to say on Wednesday. First, let us tell you about Prize Picks. We have been doing so all season. I hope you've been playing over the course of the weekend. Watching Oklahoma score touchdowns, not so much. Maybe winning Prize Picks, yes. How about that? All you got to do is download the game or the Prize Pick app or go to the website. Just download the app, though. Very, very easy to do. Put $5 in. You're going to get $50 instantly back using the promo code SoonerScoop. Where are we headed this week, Mr. Stoya?
Yeah, I've got some NBA plays tonight. I'm taking SGA,
Okay.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, over 41.5 points, rebounds, assists. So he has to get all three over 41.
Back in hometown Toronto tonight.
Yep. And then Nikola Jokic over, same thing, points, rebounds, assists, over 49.5.
I'm going to go Brandon McManus over 1.5 for the Green Bay Packers tonight in field goals up in Detroit, and then which is a fantastic matchup. And then Bucky Irving, our boy.
He's
going
the man.
over 66.5 on Sunday.
Who they got?
That's a great question. I do not know. I just picked the picks.
Well, Bucky's, it doesn't matter who they're playing. Bucky Irving's been awesome.
He's been
for
really
the
good.
Bucks.
Hell of a comeback as we drove back from Baton Rouge over the weekend. Just download the Prize Pick app, though, and then obviously $5. You get $50 instantly using the promo code SoonerScoop. All right, let's get back into a little bit more of Ben Arbuckle, because when you do talk about it, and you mentioned it, when you're talking about a resume, it is short, but all of the quarterbacks that he has worked with, they found something. I think there is one thing that you can say about this hire, and you remember what they didn't have in that offensive room last year and being a quarterback's coach. I think the guy can develop. He knows what he's talking about when you're talking about the quarterback position.
Yeah, I think development's been huge. You've seen guys have monster years with him. I think it's also, talking to some people that have played for him, it's a very quarterback-friendly scheme that he runs. And what I mean by that is he makes things work for whatever your skill talent may be. And I think you've seen that, Austin Reed and Cam Ward are guys that love to air it out, throw it all over the field, and they have the ability to do that. They've put up monster numbers under Ben Arbuckle. John Mateer, I think he can also do that, but you've also seen he has the ability to run, and Ben Arbuckle's really used that to Washington State's advantage this season. And so, he's scheming guys open. He's getting the ball into playmakers' hands. The wide receiver for Washington State, I'm blanking on his name, but
Kyle Williams.
Kyle Williams. He's had a career.
It's too bad that he.
I know.
Gabe and Teddy talked about it on the Oklahoma Breakdown. It's too bad that he doesn't have another year of eligibility.
Yeah, he'd be great, and he's a guy that they found all sorts of ways to get him the ball. And you think back to Oklahoma this season, they were unable to do that in a lot of ways.
How many times did we come in here during a practice report and say, "Hey, why don't you get the ball to this guy and just get him in space?"
And so I think that's what you really like, and that makes the quarterback's job so much easier. Where it felt like this year for Oklahoma, whether it was Jackson Arnold, Michael Hawkins in there, is really difficult for them to find open receivers. And some of that's guys being hurt and all those things, but there was never plays where you're like, oh man, that guy's just running wide open. And you see that in college football all the time. These great offenses have guys just running wide open. So I think that's the biggest thing that he's bringing is not only is he going to develop these guys, he's going to put them in a system where they can have a lot of success.
Here is Brent Venables just talking about Ben Arbuckle's track record in development.
You have to be able to identify without question. But most importantly, once you get them, you have to be able to develop them and put them in a position to be successful. And so he's had 4 really good ones that I think where he's been the full-time coach, and they all had elite level success and breaking national records. And a lot of people have good players, but they don't necessarily bring out the best in them. And so I look at that's an important thing for sure. But he's had again the quality of what he's been able to do with his opportunities. He's nailed it, hit it out of the park.
So again, we're talking about John Mateer, Cam Ward, obviously, who makes a home in Miami now. Played for him at Washington State. Austin Reed, who you caught up with. You can read George's story on Ben Arbuckle on SoonerScoop.com. And then Bailey Zappi, who's been around the NFL now for a couple years.
Yep.
I think he just got signed by maybe the Browns to
that's
their
correct.
active roster.
Yeah.
So certainly a guy that can sling it around. We'll see about what that quarterback situation is going to be for Oklahoma here moving forward as the transfer portal opens up. And, I think there's a lot of eyeballs that are going to be on the happenings of John Mateer and what happens in Pullman if he enters. If he enters, that's where I think things start heating up with Oklahoma and him, and we'll see where that goes. Wednesday was National Signing Day. We did an entire kind of instant reaction recap with Josh McCuistion, but one of the questions that you asked Brent Venables about, you look at his first class, 27 guys. You looked at last year's class, 27 guys. This year, just 18 guys currently signed to Oklahoma's 2025 class, and you basically asked him, what's the deal here? Is that a problem?
Yeah, and I think that, and I don't think it is a problem. I think that, and what I was trying to ask Brent too, is just you're seeing this across college football. You're
Sure.
seeing, schools take lesser, smaller classes. And some of that we talked yesterday with Josh is just a result of OU missing on a few guys.
Yeah.
Like I think that they anticipated having, 22, 23 guys in this class, and they just missed a few. And maybe they still
Using somebody like a Floyd Boucard as an example. as
Yeah, or
defensive tackle.
Cortez Mills
Right.
flipping yesterday, or Caleb Burns, who they hoped to add. But still, it was going to be a relatively small class by Oklahoma standards. But I think that's a result of a couple things. I think the scholarship limits that's going to come into play next season with the roster size having to shrink. OU knows it has to have success next year, and that means that they need to get some veteran guys in here, right? They need to go out and get some players in the portal. The wide receiver position obviously is a spot that I think that they're going to be really active in the portal because they lost so many guys. And then it's just also a result of OU has a lot of young guys that they're anticipating coming back next year.
81, I believe, is the number. And here is George's question as well as Brent Venables' answer to just signing 18 guys this year. Small class.
You got 17 guys here. I think last year you guys had 27. The year before that, maybe 27 signees. The smaller class, is that just because of numbers and the scholarship? I know that comes into play in terms of how many scholarships you can give, transfer portal. I mean, is it one of those things where, in college football now you're seeing teams maybe sign fewer guys and go after more experienced guys in the portal, or is it just, I guess, could you explain the lower number of guys?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you fill your class and fill your numbers, but we have 81 freshmen and sophomore on our roster. And I know I talked about that several times during the season. Probably, I don't know what the number is now, but probably over 8,000 snaps went to freshmen and sophomore this year, which is a tremendous amount of snaps. So we're not losing as many guys, as of right now. And so that plays a huge part. Not losing as many, you can't bring in as many. So that plays a big part. We'll stick to a philosophy that we want to build the program from high school, and that be the foundation of development. And retain guys, that would be ideal, and where you're not having as much turnover year in and year out. But we are dealing in a time and day in college football it's different than it's ever been. And with the ability for players, it's open to free agency. And so we're not going to be immune from losing guys that we're not counting on losing. And then, as I've been talking about for well over a year now, the day has come where we're going to have to ask some good players that we're going to have to help them move on and find a fresh start. So not a fun part of the job, but one that we've been positioning ourselves for, and we'll attack the portal in the areas that we feel like we'll have the most need, and in the spots that make us better immediately and add to what we have. And so we'll have a good majority of our team back. Not losing, again, a ton of production, but where we are losing the production, we have good young players that we've been bringing along, and then we'll add to that where we see fit, needed some experience as well through the portal.
There might be some people watching right now that haven't been caught up to speed in terms of the roster and the reduction going into next year. Could you explain just kind of where this is at?
Yeah, it's tough because I know across college football it's supposed to go to 105.
It's supposed to, I guess it'd be down, but still be bigger than some of these SEC teams.
Correct, because the walk-ons, you won't really have walk-ons anymore technically. But the SEC, I believe, is sticking at 85 scholarship limit, which makes it a little bit more difficult for Oklahoma. That could change. I wouldn't be shocked if they went to the 105, but right now I think Oklahoma's operating under 85 in terms of for next year.
It's going to be interesting.
But it's like Brent said, you've got to be really smart about who you're keeping on your roster.
Sure.
So you're going to see guys maybe get cut, maybe get offers pulled like we saw in recruiting the last few days. So don't be surprised if some of these guys jump in the portal, or even a guy like Nic Anderson who's had some health issues. I'm not saying that's what happened with Nick,
right,
but Brent's kind of alluded to that.
Somebody
kind
of that ilk that you look at him and you go, you've been on the roster for 3 years. We haven't been able to get you on the field.
Right.
They got to go in a separate direction or a different direction to try to get somebody out there that can help immediately.
And that's what Brent is. I mean, look, Brent knows his ass is on the line next year. And so he knows he has to get guys in here that can help them immediately. And you saw this last year, especially at the receiver position. I really like that group of freshmen. And some of those guys showed some signs this year. but they couldn't help OU immediately. And I think Oklahoma's operating under the same thing, that you have to go out and get maybe some juniors and seniors, guys that can help you immediately next season.
I want to talk more about the wide receiver situation. Oklahoma only signs 2 guys yesterday. Some of these guys, they're not going to be back on the team, obviously. They might have to hit up Game Time to get a ticket to one of the games. That was a bad segue, but we're here already. Game Time, all you got to do, we've talked about it all season. We've talked about it here moving forward. Thunder's going to have a bunch of big games. I know Bedlam basketball coming up on December 14th at the Paycom Center. Just hop on to Game Time. All you got to do is go to gametime.co or download the Game Time app. And, George, this is something that we've been using for the all-in pricing, the seat view, as you see up there in the left-handed corner. This is the Paycom Center right here. Actually doesn't look too bad for Bedlam basketball coming up in about a week's time.
Yeah, I think I actually might end up going to that game, so I need to look at these ticket prices. But, yeah, I use it all the time for Thunder games. I'm looking at maybe going to the NBA Cup. Is that on Tuesday next week?
Tuesday, yeah. I got Dallas coming to town.
So I was looking at it for that. I've also used it for concerts. So
Nice.
you could definitely, obviously, a lot of concerts at Paycom, you can use it for that too.
All you got to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code ON3. That is ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Just download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Terms apply.
Terms do apply. They've always applied. Terms apply. Love Game Time, though. All right, let's get back into the wide receiver thing, because we did talk about Cortez Mills. Josh went into it in the instant reaction from National Signing Day and just kind of the ins and outs of what happened there with him, as well as Grayson Harris. They only signed 2 guys, Emmanuel Choice from Lancaster High School, as well as Elijah Thomas from Shakota. Is that a problem? That was something that Brent was asked about on Wednesday.
I don't know if it's a problem as much as it's one of those areas of need that they're going to have to go out and fix. Like, it's certainly been a situation. You look at the timeline of events since the season's in, there's been a lot of movement in the wide receiver room.
Sure.
Whether it's, guys decommitting or flipping in recruiting, or a Jaquez Petaway and Nic Anderson entering the portal. Like, the reality of the situation for Oklahoma is that receiver room is going to look a lot different next year. And I would assume Nic Anderson is not the last wide receiver to jump into the portal. So Oklahoma's going to have to be very active in the portal at the wide receiver position. I believe they're already kind of looking at some guys that have jumped in. We'll see who they actually end up targeting, but there's going to be a lot of guys at receiver. Like, that's one position in the portal that you definitely can go get a couple of guys that can really help you next year. So who they are, we'll have to wait and find out. As for the guys coming in, you love Elijah Thomas, right? Local kid.
Absolutely.
He's been spectacular this year, probably the best player in the state. And then Emmanuel Choice, so I think is another guy that they view can come in and maybe help them next season. Again, I mentioned it before, the Game Time read there, but they view these guys as guys that can help them immediately, and maybe they didn't see that in Grayson Harris and Marcus Harris. So it's a difficult situation, I'm sure, that they had to handle, but Brent knows they have to get guys in here that can help them, and I think he also knows that there's some veteran guys on this team at receiver, like a Nic Anderson, that aren't going to be back next year.
No doubt. Brent did talk about just the numbers and if just taking 2 wide receivers is any type of issue for the program.
Oh, absolutely. That's nothing easy about it, but navigating it, and some of it has been planned ahead and going, according to plan. And then you have to have some flexibility and be able to pivot. Maybe some of that from a strategy standpoint, doing things that maybe you haven't had to do in the past. But uniqueness, and we had several guys hurt this year that this could have been their last year, and so we'll bring a few of those guys back. Is what we're planning to right now. And then you look at where are the spots on your roster where maybe you have a few more numbers, and where you need to, trim some fat and get your numbers and with a little more balance, and then find the areas on your roster that you need some immediate playmaking. I think is something that we've identified and will attack, when those opportunities come, when the portal opens.
This is kind of a bad setup by me right there
Yeah.
with the question, because he wasn't saying that absolutely it is a problem. So my fault. That's my fault. Everything's my fault. I
This
get
guy.
it. No, it will be interesting, though, because I do think that like that wide receiver position, I know that we've talked about defensive end possibly being something that they would need to go get into the portal. Quarterbacks
Tight
might be
ends.
an obvious. Tight ends probably going to be something
Running back,
that you need
maybe.
to almost kind of restructure that entire room a season after you just did that.
Yep.
Which is a little bit of a problem.
I think that offense, they're going to add somebody at
Anybody
probably
and everybody.
every position.
Yeah.
Because I was going through you can check this out on SoonerScoop.com on Friday, just a portal preview.
Sure.
And just going through each position, and it's like quarterback, yes. Running back, yes. Wide receiver, tight end, offensive line. Like every position on offense, I think that there's a chance that they at least add one body to that group. And again, we have to kind of wait and see, and I think Oklahoma has to wait and see. I know they're having discussions this week and probably into next week about who's sticking around, who's not, who do they want to keep, who do they, say, hey, if you want to look around, be our guest. I think that all of those things it's going to get more clear every single day. I mean, as we, upload this show, I'm sure there could be another person enter the portal. Who
That's
knows?
the way it's going to be over the next couple of days going into next week with the opening of the transfer portal. And to a certain extent, I know there's a lot of people out there that, again, when you have the 122nd passing offense, 124th total offense, and 94 scoring offense in the country, and, probably one of the worst offenses in the history of modern football for Oklahoma, anybody and everybody should be on the kind of the chopping block.
It's not always a bad thing to have a total reset, right?
Yeah.
And kind of clean house. And not I don't know if clean house is the right term, but get some new people in here in terms of what this thing looks like next year.
And yes, we hear you. The coaching stuff, we'll see. I think the patience and kind of just seeing how everything flows into December, and then obviously into January of 2025, we'll see how that coaching staff, if there are going to be some changes.
And
I know one thing's being said right now. We'll see.
Yeah, and it's just a reminder that OU hired their offense coordinator really quickly. There's going to be staff changes well into December, well into even January. I mean, look at Oklahoma State. I don't know what they're doing, but they took a while to get theirs done. But you're going to see staff changes. So if a staff, DeMarco Murray, that whole thing went down, I think, in January of last year, maybe even
When he
spring
flirted with Ohio State.
Well, yeah, so like it could happen, in a month or two, really, and then Oklahoma has to make a change at wherever that position is.
Lifetime free drinks at Murphy's and a membership to Karsten Creek. I'll come call either side of the football for Mike Gundy. It doesn't matter, and we can sit around and watch TV together.
I don't
think
think
we
that
watch
would
the
go
same
well.
channel. What?
I don't think that would go well.
I think it would go swimmingly.
Well,
Why?
it can't get any worse there either. So
That's a fact. And just like here, probably, hopefully, can't get any worse offensively at least. All right, that's going to do it for a little bit of a recap of everything that Brent Venables said on Wednesday. If you do want to watch that, you can see everything that was said during about the 35 minutes with Brent on Wednesday right here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. Just scroll down or scroll up. I don't know which way you're viewing it. You might be watching it upside down. You might be watching it sideways. Whatevs. We'll keep you updated. You're more than welcome to come to the Arbuckle Fiesta as well.
I'll be there. I definitely want to be there. I thought you asked me to speak at it.
Well, I think you are going to be in the speaker, but Lauren Boebert's going to be the headline speaker, the keynote speaker. So for George Stoya, I'm Eddie Radosevich. We'll see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.